The first news is Obama's presidency beset by fate starts in year 5. It was a moment for Barack Obama to savor. His second inaugural address over, Obama posed as he strode from the podium last January, turning back for one last glance across the expanse of National Mall, where a supportive throng stood in the winter chill to witness the launch of his new term. "I want to take a look, one more time," Obama said quietly. "I'm not going to see this again." There was so much Obama could not or did not see then, as he opened his second term with a confident call to arms and an expansive liberal agenda. He'd never heard of Edward Snowden, now would lay bare the government's massive surveillance program. Large-scale use of chemical weapons in Syria was only a threat. A government shutdown and second debt crisis seemed improbable. His health care law, the signature achievement of his presidency, seemed poised to make the leap from theory to reality. Obama had campaigned for re-election on the hope that a second term would bring with it a new spirit of compromise after years of partisan rancor on Capitol Hill. "My expectation is that there will be some popping of the blister after this election, because it will have been such a stark choice," he said. Instead, great expectations disappear in fumbles and failures. Obama's critics doubled down. Fractured Republicans tugged to the right by the Tea Party, swore of compromise. The president's outreach to Congress was somewhere between lacking and non-existent. Obama's team dropped the ball calamitously on his health care law. Snowden's revelations had Democrats and Republicans alike calling for tighter surveillance rules. Foreign leaders were in a huff. Brazil's president snubbing the offer of a White House state dinner. Germany's Angela Merkel incensed that her cell phone calls had been intercepted. The president's misplaced pledge that people who lacked their health plans would be able to keep them ran into a harsh reality, as millions saw their coverage cancelled. The year ended with a small-bore budget deal that was welcomed as a breath of fresh air, a telling sign of how widely things had veered off course in 2013. White House Communication Director Jennifer Palmieri called it a year of fits and starts for the president, and predicted better days ahead. "We'll probably come out of 2013 in better shape in terms of Congress and the White House being able to function together," she said. Yet Obama's agenda of gun control, immigration reform, a grand budget bargain, and more sit unfulfilled. Obama's job approval and personal favorability ratings are near the lowest point of his presidency, with increasing numbers of Americans saying they no longer consider him to be honest or trustworthy. Abroad, too, positive views of Obama have slipped, with confidence in him doing the right thing in world affairs dropping. The mantra for the Obama White House has always been to take the long view. Officials scoff at the who's up, who's down trend of Washington's chattering class and recall with glee Obama's ability to rebound from moments in his first term when his presidency was declared in peril. But as Obama embarked on his second term, some of his close outside advisors warned him that the next 4 years would have to be different. He was operating on a shorter leash and might have just 18 months, perhaps as little as a year, to accomplish big domestic priorities. All Obama needed to do was look to his predecessors to see how quickly trouble can consume a second term. Richard Nixon resigned. Ronald Reagan got ensnared in the Iran-Contra affair. Bill Clinton was impeached for lying about his dalliances with Monica Lewinsky. And George W. Bush lost the public's trust through his botched handling of Hurricane Katrina's aftermath and the unpopular Iraq War. Obama's team thought it had a strategy for overcoming the second-term curse that would make a quick play for stricter gun control measures, then capitalize on the GOP's post-election anxiety by pressing for an immigration overhaul and floating the possibility of a big budget deal. Each of those efforts failed, and Obama quickly found himself consumed by an unending series of distractions. Some were fleeting, like the revelations that the Internal Revenue Service was applying extra scrutiny to conservative groups, but others threatened long-term damage to his presidency. The National Security Agency disclosures and the disastrous rollout of Obamacare health law. Some events were beyond Obama's control, and his frustration with them was evident when he filmed in September during the crisis over Syria. I would much rather spend my time talking about how to make sure every 3- and 4-year-old gets a good education than I was spending time thinking about how I can prevent 3- and 4-year-olds from being subjected to chemical weapons and nerve gas. But presidents don't get to pick their crisis, and plenty of Obama's woes were of his own making, raising questions about his competence and management of the White House. How could he not have known that his government was spying on the private communications of friendly world leaders? Why didn't he know his health care website wouldn't work? How could he have promised over and over again that Americans could keep their health insurance if they liked it, when his own advisor knew it wasn't that simple? As a result, the president is ending his 5th year in office in a defensive crouch, says presidential historian Douglas Brinkley, and may have to be content with simply protecting his health care law and other Democratic-backed programs that Republicans are eager to repeal. At this point, says Brinkley, it's really a firewall presidency. The 2014 midterm election gave Obama his best opportunity to rebound, but Democrats who just weeks ago saw an opportunity to retake the House after Republicans got blamed for government shutdown, now fret about the health care law's ongoing problems, and may be content to just keep control of the Senate. There is a certain irony in Obama's success depending on Congress, a body with whom he has had a lukewarm partnership. Lawmakers from both parties say Obama doesn't talk to them much, nor do his aides. Letters go unanswered. Policies come out of the blue. Social interactions are few. Both sides wistfully recall the voluble Clinton, who figured out how to craft deal with Republicans on welfare reform and other agenda items after the GOP took control of the House and made big gains in Senate 2 years into his presidency. St. Tom Coburn, an Oklahoma Republican who worked with Obama when he was a senator and still considers the president a friend, says flatly, he's flunked in terms of relation with Congress. If you know him personally, he's a very likable person, says Coburn. But it's different than with most other presidents in terms of having relationship with Congress. There's a lack of personal touch. Of course, the president's tepid relationship with Congress is hardly his fault alone. The Tea Party forces the poor House Republicans to the right in recent years made it difficult for the GOP to reach agreement with Democrats on much of anything, and produced the shutdown over the president's health care law that spawned the government shutdown. Obama did attempt to improve relations with Republicans earlier this year, holding a few dinners with GOP lawmakers. His chief of staff, Dennis McDonald, has been widely praised by Republicans for being a frequent visitor to Capitol Hill. But some lawmakers say that as far as the outrage goes, St. John McCain, the Arizona Republican who ran against Obama in 2008, but has since tried to work with him on immigration and the budget, say no one from the White House Legislative Affairs staff has ever called him or come to his office just to chat. What does it matter if Obama doesn't buddy up to his former colleagues? He needs those relationships to advance his agenda in Congress, and the strong ties with legislators are emblematic of a broader problem for Obama rooted in his tendency to keep a tight inner circle. Instead of going out and talking to his enemies, making friends and schmoozing, or banging heads together with them or whatever, you can see that the man is different, deeply different about the kinds of politicking that are necessary to build consensus, says Nigel Nicholson, a professor at the London Business School who has written a book about leadership in which Obama is a frequent topic. The president has been getting plenty of that kind of advice in recent weeks. Critics call for a sweeping shake-up of his White House inner circle. Even his allies call for anyone to be fired for the health care failures. Obama has responded in his typically restrained fashion. No one has lost a job over the massive health care screw-up, though the White House hasn't ruled it out. And while the president is doing some minor shuffling in the West Wing, he is largely bringing in people he already knows. To critics, the limited staff changes smack of a White House that doesn't fully understand the depths of his problems. But presidential friend Ron Kirk said they are indicative of Obama's fairly dispassionate temperament, which allows him to hold steady in the face of adversity. He understands that overreacting to any one development in the moment is not the best way to achieve a long-term and stable objective, said Kirk, who served as U.S. Trade Representative in Obama's first term. The president's agenda for his 6th year in office is a stark reminder of how little he accomplished in 2013. Obama plans to make another run at immigration reform. He'll seek to increase the minimum wage and expand access to early childhood education. Proposals he first outlined in his 2013 State of the Union address, and he'll look to implement key elements of the climate change speech he delivered earlier this year, many of which are stagnant. Foreign policy could be an oasis for the struggling second-term president. With Ruja's help, he turned his public indecision over attacking Syria into an unexpected agreement to strip President Bashar Assad of his chemical weapons. Though the success of effort won't be known for some time and the civil war in Syria rages on, Obama also authorized daring secret negotiations with Iran, resulting in an interim nuclear agreement. But even the president says the prospect of getting a final deal are only 50-50. In the year-end news conference, the president optimistically predicted that 2014 would be a breakthrough year for America. But Obama's dismal standing in the polls suggests he can't count on the public groundswell to propel his agenda. The heady days of 2009, when Alice boasted of Obama as the best brand on earth, are long gone. We'll wear thin with American people after a while, says McCain. Though he warns against counting out any president with 3 years left to govern, particularly this one. To count a man of that talent out at this point in time in his administration would be a huge mistake, he says. The next one is protect yourself against winter allergies and asthma. Allergies and asthma don't take a winter holiday, even during the cold months. Common allergens are all around, and worse, allergies and asthma can be exacerbated by a holiday season full of alcohol, unhealthy foods, and poor sleep habits. Your immune system is run down. When you are tired, your immune system is tired, and you are more sensitive to allergens, says Dennis Wood, the clinical director at the Advanced Allergy Solutions Clinic in San Francisco. During the colder months, when snow and rain cloud the air, it can be hard to imagine the common outdoor allergens like pollen could be swirling around. And for people living in snowy environments, springtime have fever, the generic term for a collection of symptoms like sinus irritation, itchy eyes, and congestion caused by allergens known as allergic rhinitis. Most likely won't be a worry, says Wood. However, for people living in warmer climates, there is a price to pay for nicer weather. Largely, if things are in bloom and trees retain their leaves, there is a chance of pollen-induced allergies. But with many people heading indoor for winter festivities, exposure to indoor allergens increases. For asthmatic sensitive to common indoor allergens, the winter months unfortunately don't offer seasonal relief. In addition to common allergens, Christmas trees, fireplaces, and poor diet and sleep habits can contribute to asthma and allergies. While the pine scent of a Christmas tree is certainly evocative of the season, it may not be the best idea for people who are particularly sensitive. Ditto with fireplaces, which release smoke and pollutant into the air. If possible, wash the tree outside and let it dry completely before bringing it inside. The tactic seems to help a majority of patients who have pollen allergies, Wood says, and make sure fireplaces are well ventilated. And when central heating is turned on and circulating air throughout the house, it's also circulating things like dust mite, and pet dander. If you are particularly sensitive to dust or dander-induced asthma attacks, would recommend switching off the central heating and trying space heaters as an alternative, which won't circulate allergens along with the hot air. Allergies are an inflammatory response to an allergen, and certain foods like sugar, dairy, and wheat can produce additional inflammatory responses that compound the reaction, Wood says. For asthmatics, preservatives and nitrate can be particularly irritating, she says. In addition to certain food weakening your allergy defenses, when you are tired and have had perhaps one too many mugs of eggnog or hot cider, your immune system can be compromised and become more prone to a reaction. The combination of being run down and eating a lot of food, people are more susceptible to getting that sinus infection, Wood says. While that doesn't mean you should forego the entire holiday spread, it does mean that if you are suffering from a running nose or itchy eyes, skipping the sugar-laced gingerbread house or a second helping of ice cookie may be a good idea. You are safe on tissue and will enjoy the holidays a bit more through clear eyes and without a rubbing red nose. Next, Hollywood struggles against new filmmakers. In the old days, filmmakers flocked to Hollywood for its abundant sunshine, beautiful people, and sandy beaches. But today, a filmmaking diaspora is spreading across the globe to places like Vancouver, London, and Wellington, New Zealand. Fueled by politicians doling out generous tax breaks, filmmaking talent is migrating to where the money is. The result is an incentives arms race that pits California against government around the world and allows powerful studios with hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal to cherry-pick the best deals. The most recent iteration of the phenomenon came earlier this month when James Cameron announced plans to shoot and produce the next 3 Avatar sequels, largely in New Zealand. What Cameron gets out of the deal is a 25% rebate on production cost, as long as his company spends at least $430 million on the 3 films. There's no place in the world that we could make these sequels more cost-effectively, says producer John Lando. It is neither the archipelago's volcanoes nor its glaciers that are attractive, because the after movies will be shot indoors. Sure, Peter Jackson's award-winning special effect infrastructure is there, but the But the deciding factor was the money. We looked at other places, says Lando, but in the end, it was this rebate. In exchange, the local economy will benefit hugely, Lando says, comparing the ripple effect to the boost that comes from new home construction. We are doing lumber. We are catering for hundreds of people a day. We are housing people in hotels. We are going to a stationery store and tripling their business in a year. The deal was the best Christmas present we could have possibly hoped for, says Alex Lee, an Auckland, New Zealand-based entertainment lawyer. The news is especially welcome because the local screen industry is facing a potential drought. The Star's paid TV series Spartacus finished this year, and Peter Jackson's The Hobbit trilogy is set to wrap next year. Thanks to the after sequels, the 1,100 workers at Weta Digital Limited, the groundbreaking digital effect house Jackson co-founded in 1993, can keep plugging away through 2018. It would have been a real shame if he had lost any of the talent and they had to move to follow the films, says Wellington Mayor Celia Webb-Brown. Driving the trend are powerful global forces squeezing the entertainment industry. Falling DVD sales are putting pressure on movie-making budget, while the demand for ever more amazing special effects grows. The spread of technology and skills around the world is creating a huge number of special effects suppliers, some using cheaper labor than can be found in Hollywood. Government largesse has helped create mini Magodems in Vancouver, Montreal, London, New York, and Wellington, all of which are aggressively one-upping each other to become the next new hotbed of activity. As the work spreads, branch offices of visual effect companies have opened up in new locations, even though digital work is borderless. Workers must live and be paid locally to generate the income, taxes, and spending that governments seek. The tax incentives raise is destined to accelerate next year. State incentives in California, home to Star Wars, pioneer industrial light and magic, are too small to accommodate big-budget movies. Democratic Assembly member Ro Bokengra is preparing a bill to expand their scope, but it could take months to get through committees, says his chief of staff, Ben Gollenbeck. And the U.S. federal incentive, an arguably difficult-to-use tax deduction of up to $20 million per film or TV episode, is set to expire at the end of 2013. Once our federal incentive ends in 2 weeks, you are going to have a lot of people we are going to go elsewhere, says Ho Corky Kessler, a tax incentives lawyer with Chicago-based Deutsch, Levy and Engel. Industry business leaders say they are simply following the money. This is no different than any other multinational business, says Sir William Sargent, co-founder and CEO of Framestore, a London-based special effect business that works on likely Oscar contender Gravity, and has offices in Montreal, New York, and Los Angeles. We are just going to where our customers are. Even if the U.S. moves to counteract growing incentives overseas, the effort won't prevent another jurisdiction from offering a bigger break. Joseph Chinis, Executive Vice President at consulting company EP Financial Solutions, says the competition to offer attractive incentives is intense. More than 30 countries and 44 U.S. states now offer tax breaks to filmmakers. The mix changes daily, but it's not going away, Cheney says. We have now trained a generation of filmmakers and TV makers that production doesn't have to happen here anymore.